Good morning or good afternoon. I hope everybody is having a good time and hope everybody is well. My name is Keith O'Crossi, and this is our first session of Zoom videos through the Career Development Services Office. So I really appreciate you joining us, and I hope this is going to be helpful for you all. So I'm going to just walk you through, we have about a half hour, but I could stay on a little longer if you have questions. You can just unmute your mic if you need. It looks like we're going to be a pretty small group, which is just fine. And if you see on the bottom, if you have any questions, you can also use the chat feature, which should be available at the bottom of your screen here. Okay, so I'm going to just share my screen, and then we'll get ourselves started. All right. Okay, so today we have we're going to discuss how to effectively write your resume. And a real focus on today's discussion is really how to strengthen those resume bullets and make sure that the sort of things you want to share with an employer is really, you're sharing, really strong bullets, and you're describing and communicating yourself well to those employers and really tailoring your resume. So I'm going to walk you through a few things in terms of how to improve all of that. And of course, if you have any questions, just share. All right, so this is me. My name is Keith O'Crossi. I'm the Student Career Programs Manager at Hunter College. I've been at Hunter for a little over 12 years now, working directly with students as well as managing career development programs for Hunter College students. And, I would say that in terms of supporting resumes, one of the biggest services that we offer is resume critiques. So I would say that you're in good hands. And I also know our Hunter students and alumni and a lot of the opportunities that they're aiming for. Also, this is a workshop that could be available, that is useful for anybody. It doesn't matter the field that you're pursuing, whether it's in the field of healthcare or in business. Some of these tips are things that you can take away no matter what your aim is, whether it's a job opportunity in finance or maybe an internship in the healthcare field. All right, so let's just jump on into sort of things that we plan on getting out of today's discussion. As a result of our conversation, I would say that you should be able to build those resume bullets. Having resume bullets that are a little bit stronger than one or two words that are really reflecting a strong experience and can showcase the strengths that you have. Two, adding accomplishments to your resume. Many of you might have descriptions of what you've done on the jobs and internships that you've had, but I don't know how many of you may have had actual accomplishments or things that you've contributed to the businesses listed. So that's another important factor that we're going to be covering today. And then finally, we'll close out the discussion on how to tailor that content to fit the employer's expectations. If you're sending out the same resume to every employer for various jobs and internships, it's really not going to be as effective as taking the time and making sure that your resume is really reflecting what you would say, what the employer is looking to see. And so that's what we're going to close out the discussion with. All right, so does that sound good? All right, good. Okay, thank you so much, Yang. All right, so why has your resume not gotten attention? I'm sure a lot of you have submitted a lot of resumes, and perhaps you've had a few interviews, or maybe you've gotten responses to interviews, but still would like to see more response to your resume, more calls, more emails from employers to say that they've received their resume and they're really excited to hear from you. Letitia, do you have a question? No. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. One is poor format. You want to ensure that your resume is formatted well, that it is organized properly, that everything is consistent. And if your resume just doesn't look good, or if it has typos, or if it's all over the place and it's hard to read, it makes it very difficult for an employer to identify the information they're looking for. And it also doesn't show a very good, strong presentation. So it's important, of course, to make sure that your resume is well organized and that you're looking that over before you submit it to the employer, that everything is aligned and that everything is consistent and that you have no typos. It's also, in terms of format, I would encourage you to import that format into either a PDF form or maybe a Word document. Many of you might be using Google Docs. And Google Docs can do different things to your resume that may not necessarily be too effective when you're converting that to a PDF, which is how the employer will probably want to receive your resume. So make sure that you are downloading that first and looking it over to see that all of the alignment in that page is correct. And also, you may even want to print it, because sometimes you have an issue where the resume looks like it's on one page, but then when you print it, it might print out a second blank page because of the way the document is laid out. So it's important to make sure your resume is formatted well. Typos and errors, that kind of goes hand in hand with the poor formatting. It's good practice to go over your resume carefully every time you submit your resume, and also, of course, to have somebody look it over again. It's a sort of document that we often want to finish up and then have it done and look at again after it's over with, because it's not the most exciting sort of read. But with typos on the resume, that could really, again, show a poor execution and not look good to an employer. So make sure that you're crafting your resume well, and then it's looked at twice or 3 times over yourself, and also with somebody else. The weak resume bullets, and this is what we're going to focus most of our conversation around, is strengthening those resume bullets, making sure that you're not just leading with things that are not too strong, that maybe are very minimal, maybe make your experience seem rather light. If you have 1 or 2 words to a bullet, it's just not going to send the message that you have enough experience that the employers are going to be interested in. So you need to show that you have what it takes, that you have been involved with making decisions, that you have helped to solve problems. And we're going to go into how you can expand on that. Doesn't showcase your strengths. So through expanded and developed bullets, you can showcase how you've applied your skills, how effective that's been, what kind of impact it's had on companies that you've worked for. And so if your resume seems very bland or doesn't really showcase how effective you've been in your work, it's not going to be very appealing to an employer, and they're going to overlook your resume. And it's not tailored to the job or the internship. Make sure that each time you send your resume that you're carefully looking over that opportunity. You are identifying what's important for that employer, because they're going to use their own lens. They're going to use their perspective when they're looking at your resume or your application. If your resume seems like it could be sent to anybody. Question, yes. Somebody have a question? No? Okay. All right. So we'll move along. If you have questions, just feel free to unmute your mic if you'd like. So in any event, definitely make sure you're tailoring that. And again, we're going to cover that at the very end of the discussion. So you're going to turn that around starting today. So I'm assuming that many of you, as I said before, probably are sending out resumes. You want to make sure that your resume is getting noticed, especially in this challenging time. So if you're not doing a lot of these things, and you're strengthening that resume and just strengthening how you present yourself, you're going to have a lot of responses from employers, and your resume is going to be that much stronger. All right, so let's dive into expanding on your bullets. So let's take a look at this. I don't know if any of you have had some customer service experiences or worked in retail, but you may have bullets that look similar to this, right? Help customers with purchases. So what's wrong with this particular bullet? Anybody can sort of share if they have some thoughts. Is this appropriate for a resume? Think about it also from the perspective of the employer. Do you think this is...
I guess what customers, what kind of customers, what kind of purchases, like what exactly? Preciseness.
Yes, thank you very much, Evgenia. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sorry, Evgenia. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that could be expanded on. It doesn't have enough details, and so the employer, if they're looking at that, will have those questions, like exactly what setting is this? How many people are you dealing with? And it just seems rather minimal. Even how you help customers, exactly what you're doing with them, could be expanded on and could be explained. And so if you find yourself having bullets that are similar to this, that maybe just has an word and a little bit of what you did, it may not be sufficient. It may not be enough. It's just sort of summarizing what you've done, but it doesn't sell why you're the right candidate. At the end of the day, the resume is a marketing tool, right? And so if you're not communicating your strengths well enough, it's not going to be effective. It's going to really seem unappealing, and it won't make you stand out from all the other applicants and candidates. All right, so when you want to expand on those bullets, think about these following questions, and it's similar to what you've just said. One, how did you do this work? So exactly what were the tools that you used to do that? When you were helping customers, what kind of strengths were you using, skills you were using, what setting were you in? You know, were there any particular tools that you were using in order for you to handle that work or handle those customers? So expand on those bullets by describing some of that information, and try to include some of those details when it comes to how you actually are physically doing that work that you're listing on the bullet. Are there other words that you could use that would strengthen that sentence, right? So the word help is a very vague term. It could be used in a lot of ways. Start with action words. You could say communicated, you could say supported, you could say collaborated. So there's so many different ways to describe your actions. If you use a more of an auxiliary type of verb, or one that is a bit too blanketed, it may not be strong enough. And the other thing with the words themselves, and this gets back to tailoring your resume, you want to think about how consistent that is to the job or internship you're applying for. If you could revise the wording on your resume to more closely align that job description or that internship description, again, that's going to help to strengthen your resume, because those are the sort of things that the employer is looking for. How much or how many did you work with, right? So when it comes to customers, volumes of people, you could be working in a very high volume kind of setting. You could be working with multiple customers at the same time. Hold on a quick second. I see a couple more questions. Not show the strengths. Okay. And how many bullets per job description would be ideal? Thank you very much for that question. So I don't think when it comes to the number of bullets, I wouldn't worry too much about having a consistency in terms of the number of bullets. I've seen resumes that maybe just stick to 3 or 4. My suggestion in terms of rule of thumb is that the descriptions of the jobs or internships that you've had that are the most closely aligned to the sort of opportunities that you're applying for next, those should get more weight. So you could differentiate those experiences in the jobs that maybe you've had further in the past, or that are not as important. They could have maybe 1, 2, 3 bullets. Whereas the ones that are more recent, the ones that are more relevant, ones that are more important could have more weight. And that shows also sort of the importance of that particular opportunity as well. So in terms of numbers, I don't think you necessarily need to worry too much. I think that it's really a matter of weight. It's a matter of sort of prioritizing specific opportunities over others, and expanding when you really need to expand. Sometimes too much is a little bit too much. So I would think probably about 20. Maybe a little bit too much for a description. But again, it's really a matter of what kind of message you're sending to the employer. If it needs to be there, you should give it its attention. Does that answer your question? Yes? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so cool. So going back then to this, how much or how many did you work with? Definitely include numbers. And also the other thing is that numbers stand out on the resume, and the sea full of text that is a resume, those numbers really do help. So definitely include that on the resume as well. What tools or applications did you use? This is sort of aligned with what we said earlier about how did you do this work. If there were certain software applications that you were utilizing, if there was a method of, maybe customer service method that you're applying, to the work that you were doing, or if you're in an education setting or in a counseling setting, and there's a certain modality that you apply, or a teaching philosophy, include that in the job description as well, so that again you're incorporating those keywords and are expanding and explaining how you actually do this work. And then who helped you, or how did you help? So we all work with a team. We don't necessarily work in a vacuum. Even if a lot of our work right now is remote, we're still collaborating with others. So incorporate bullets that really also explain, you know, how you support others, whether it's as a team member or if you are helping other people. What exactly did you do to help? What did you do to contribute to the team? All right. And then finally, and then we'll go into some more detail here, but what was the outcome, right? So we do have a lot of bullets probably that describe our actual responsibilities and our actions. But if you're not including results, if you're not including the impact of that work on the institution, again, that's just not going to send a strong enough message to an employer. And many employers really are looking for these sort of things on resumes nowadays. So having results on the resume really helps to strengthen that resume. And if you can quantify those results, again, that really helps really make your resume stand out even stronger. All right, so any particular questions or anything else with regards to these questions that you'd like to go over? Anything that maybe we missed or that you need some more explanation about? All right, Marissa, I see you have a question. How many pages do you recommend? It's a very good question. I think that especially for undergraduates, it's still a good idea, a good rule of thumb to keep your resume to 1 page. You know, especially if your resume, maybe if it's on 2 pages, but it's 1.25 pages, 1.5 pages, it just is not efficient for an employer. They'll have to thumb through those different those different pages, and it just doesn't have the same sort of presentation. So it's better if you could try to fit that all on 1 page. It just makes it a lot easier for an employer to do a quick glance. You have to remember, employers take very little time to go over resumes. They probably spend only a few short seconds reviewing the resume and already making a decision. Think about it yourself in terms of the work that you do. I mean, oftentimes you know, will be doing your work, and at the beginning it took a little bit of time, but after a while you can just kind of almost estimate what's going to happen next. And that's a lot of times what employers are doing. If they're looking at piles of resumes or looking online and going through the applications online, they're going to be able to pick out certain things they're looking for very quickly. So if your resume is too many pages, it's going to be challenging for them to really get through everything. And then I see another question from Mushi Cow. Sorry if I mispronounced that. How can I showcase my experience of internship, mostly in freelance projects, self-launch, self-project, social impact, doing freelance translation content? Yeah, I mean, all of that is definitely appropriate, you know, and I think a lot now, you know, the workforce itself, and I'm sure that this circumstance is probably changing the industry greatly already, so that we're probably going to be doing a lot more project-based work. So you should feel confident to list that experience on your resume. You can describe it just as you would any other work experience. The formatting might change just slightly, but you know, still organized in the same way that you would if you were working for a traditional employer. And if a lot of that is perhaps leadership or internship experience, you could have separate categories in the resume to highlight that in a different way that's different from your work experience. Thank you for that question. That's great. And then how much job history should be covered? Again, Letitia, thank you again for that question. I would say that is really up to you. You know, what I think, again, another good rule of thumb is maybe not going farther back than, let's say, 5 to 7 years or so. You know, again, you know, if there are certain things that are, you know, even further in your past that are relevant, that's fine. But really, employers want to see more recent experiences. And, you know, you have to think about and take it back to the question about what it is exactly that the employer is looking for. When you recenter your attention from, you know, just kind of summarizing your experience to using your resume to show that you have what it takes to fit this job, your resume is going to be that much stronger, because employers are thinking from their own perspective. They're thinking about what they need, how they're going to fill that job, you know, the demands that they have. And so they don't need to see everything. So if you are focusing your attention and tailoring your resume, you could probably go over some jobs that maybe are not as important and either remove them or maybe minimize the number of bullets that you have, you know, ascribed to them, so that you can keep that to 1 page and keep it concise and consistent. So, and then Nada, all right. Nada, this will be my last question. I'll go to the next slide though. Is this going to be saved, and is there any way we can contact you if needed? Yes, very good question. I will provide the career@hunter email. You can email career@hunter.cuny.edu. We're also doing Zoom appointments, or at least I am. So if you want, you can email and ask for, you know, a FaceTime or a Zoom appointment to go over your resume or to go over your career development needs. And yes, this is going to be saved, and I, you know, plan on we'll be putting this up on our website and also on our social media pages. So thank you again. Very good, good question. All right, cool. So let's move on then to to how we've revised this sentence. I'm just going to minimize this. Okay, so now let's revisit this with these questions in mind. So the bullet that we had, which wasn't as strong, was helped customers with purchases. So what do you think about this? Advise 30+ customers daily using a client-driven approach to help guide selections, leading to overall increase of sale by 15%. So any thoughts? What do you think about this? Look good? Yes?
That's great.
Good. Thank you. You're a little shy on there. That's okay. Thank you. That's cool. So yeah, I mean, we see, and we have a few more chats. Cool. Selections is a little vague. That's true. Very good point, Alyssa. You know, you could expand on that too. Very good point. But thank you for that. So yeah, I mean, but we can see here in this bullet, we're applying a lot of these same questions, right? Advise is a bit of a stronger word than helped. It's a bit clearer and also might be a key word. You know, maybe they're applying for counseling jobs in the field of psychology and they'd want to use that terminology. 30+, so we see the volumes of people that that they're working with. It's a pretty large number of people that they're handling. Using client-driven approach, so that might be a very specific sort of philosophy or approach that maybe their store or maybe the fields utilizes in order to help with customer selections. Yeah, sure, maybe selections could be more clear, but in this case, perhaps it's not too important. But if anything, maybe if they're applying for similar jobs, you know, they could say something more clear, such as closing, you know, selections on, you know, fashion or whatever that case but is might be. But in any event, you know, they are sort of explaining how they're doing that work and what's and what that's leading to. And then finally, leading to an overall increase of sales by 15%. So again, they're tracking that progress. They're tracking that increase. And so right here, you have very clear responsibility, a little bit more detail and depth, and I can see the strengths there. Right? Okay, so this is so these are some questions to keep in mind as you're going through your resumes to make sure that your resume bullets are looking good. All right, so you have accomplishments on your resume. So how many of you do have accomplishments on your resume? Do you include anything like we've listed in the last slide? No, yes, no?
Maybe some.
Maybe some, and then we have a couple of people. No? Okay, thank you, Deborah. Yes, okay, Nada has, that's good. Yeah, and you have awards, that's excellent. Thank you, Alyssa. Certificates can be accomplishments, sure. No, but that's okay, Valentina. We'll show you how to describe that. And what certain accomplishments? Good question, Brian. Good. So yes, and when it comes to accomplishments, certainly certifications, acknowledgements, honors, those are really good things, and I'm sure a lot of you do have that on the resume. But I'm also thinking about accomplishments on the job, things that you've actually achieved, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have, you know, one employee of the month or anything like that, but things you've contributed, things you've been able to do for your company that has provide value to the team in some way. Yeah, projects also could be accomplishments, especially projects, you know, things you actually, sort of the results of the project. So that's sort of what you want to think about. What are the results, right? So again, we probably have a lot of bullets that describe exactly what we've done. We may not necessarily be including what the impact was or the result itself, right? So this is a couple of things that you should do to start thinking through this question, right? So start identifying this for yourself. If you don't have accomplishments listed, and by that I really do mean things you've done in your jobs or internships or in your projects, go back over your experience and identify those moments that stood out and show those skills. So if, let's say, you were really good at sales, that's definitely something you want to not jot down. If you maybe have had a moment where you went above and beyond for a patient, or maybe there was some really great things that patients that you've worked with before have said about you, or you know, if you worked in a research project in a lab and the work that you performed was very strong, maybe you had very, very good results, or maybe you were very efficient and learning the technology and the software very, very quickly, or perhaps you've come up with some new ideas. Maybe you were on a team for your sorority or fraternity, and you contributed some interesting ideas to host new events or to raise funds, and that was something that was beneficial for the organization, and that maybe you were able to raise some income for the organization. So think about those moments and jot them down. Start drafting that. Start sort of documenting that. And yes, Dima.
Hi. Hi. I have a question.
Sure.
Can I include, for example, right now I'm in the ambassador program for college now at Hunter. So should I include this in accomplishments, or where should I include this?
Well, as an experience, because the ambassador program, you know, you are, you know, doing work, you're providing tours and so forth. You can list though as a bullet. I mean, because that is also that's a program that not very many students, you know, have the opportunity to do. It really shows, you know, what you've contributed already and the strengths of your academics. So if you wanted to perhaps start off with what it took to get into the program, that's fine. And the same thing is true of any promotions that you may have had within any jobs that you've had, or maybe if you were given additional responsibilities and internships.
For example, right now in the ambassador program, what I had done this week was that I offered like a Zoom meeting to all my high school students at Emma Lazarus High School.
Yes.
Offering this College Now program. So I should include this in accomplishment, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
right.
I totally agree. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that too. Very nice.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so definitely on your own, kind of go through those moments that really stood out and you feel, you know, show that what you've contributed. Also, of course, your managers, your coworkers, your supervisors, your professors, you know, will also know what you're capable of. And so if you either have evaluations, copies of those evaluations, or if you can recall some of those meetings that you've had, or maybe if you haven't quite had those meetings, or if they were a little while ago and you don't recall, you know, as you're either getting close to graduating or maybe you're going to be applying for internship programs, consider having a meeting with your manager and think about certain things that they share with you about what your capability is and what you've contributed and what they think your potential is. So, you know, information from people that know your work, know who you are, know how you work is also really important to be thinking about and to be sort of utilizing in your resume. And then finally, really think about what your role is and what impact you have, right? So, you know, what is the relevance of the job that you have now? You know, what overall are you tasked to do, and what is the impact of that, right? Within the office that you work for, the team that you're on, the organization that you're in, what is that role, and how effective have you been at doing that role? Even if it feels like this, you know, something that you're just doing on a regular basis, it's just a part of your job, that's fine. You know, if you're doing that job well, if you're able to support the people that you're providing support for, maybe it's helping young people to learn as a tutor, or maybe it is supervising young children, or helping individuals with disabilities and you know, and so forth. Even though much of those jobs may have quite a bit of routine, you probably have seen progress in those students, in the students' work and so forth. So definitely really think through what impact you've had within the organizations and the jobs and internships you've had, and that's going to be your source for those accomplishments. So I see there are a few other questions. I'm going to get to those in a moment through the chat. So here is a formula for incorporating those accomplishments on the resume. Now, in terms of where you place this, you know, again, some of those things such as certifications and honors and awards, those are appropriate to list in a separate category and format them as such. But what I'm really referring to here are accomplishments within the jobs and internships you've had. So this would be a bullet on your resume embedded in the job description or the internship description. And so this is just a way of writing that. And this actually comes from Google. Google uses this formula, and they like to see that formula on applications that they see coming into their offices. Accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Okay? So we could see that from the last bullet that we had looked at before, right? They were able to accomplish that increase in sales. That was measured by that increase in sales, however that was measured, and that you could see the actual physical work. There was a certain mode or that they were utilizing to provide customer service. Here I'm going to go over to the next slide and show an example. But before I do that, hold on a quick second. Let me just see if there are any additional questions on the chat. All right, so yes, Marissa, definitely include honors or awards from work, absolutely. Should a resume have an objective? And so Letitia, no, I would not encourage you to list an objective on the resume. It's just not necessary, especially now that so many applications are done online. So just start, this takes off any excess room on the page, and it keeps it focused on what employers are looking for. And is it possible to get, so yeah, Maria, we're probably going to be listing this on our social media page, so we'll definitely share the recording with you. All right, so I think that's questions that are currently on the list there. You're welcome, Brian. All right, cool. All right, so here's an example. Develop new office communication system. So now, is this okay? I mean, what do you think about having this sort of bullet on the resume? Does this really showcase an accomplishment? Oh yeah, with media, yes, I think that the slideshow will be available, Ethan. Too vague, thank you, Sneha. Right, so what's missing here, right? Maybe we go back to those questions that we had a few other slides, and I think that'll give us some ideas. How about this? Increase customer response time by 45%, implementing Slack channels for office communication, right? So here, I think we have a little bit clearer, what this person did, how they did it, and what the impact was and how that's actually measured. So there was a 45% increase in response time to customers, and this person implemented Slack channels. So I suppose in the office, they probably created Slack accounts, and that helped improve the office communication. How do you measure the percentage given? That's definitely a good question. So something like response time, I think that's probably something that you could definitely measure, right? You could clearly say, okay, well, maybe prior to the Slack channels being implemented within the office, responses to customer inquiries may have been on average about 20 to 30 minutes at a time, right? For a customer to be responded to. I'm just assuming this, right? But maybe after the Slack channels were implemented and the communications were strengthened among the office team, maybe those responses, that response time went down by 10 or 15 minutes, right? And so you just do the percentage change, and there's your percentage. And you could do that with a lot of things. There's really a lot of things that you really can quantify. And, you may not necessarily have access to all the records of your current employer, but this is a good reason why you should be tracking what you're doing and tracking, what you're responsible for. And then there are certainly things that are a little bit hard to measure, that are more challenging to describe, or even, since there are multiple people who are involved with making changes, it's kind of hard to say that you are the one actually making that difference, right? And so in this case, we could say that the implementation of the Slack channel really did show that increase, because beforehand there was probably on average, something that you could track, and let's say it was about 30 minutes or so, and then after that, you really probably could see over the course of time that really that was cut in half or near to half, right? But there are other examples. For if you're working with students, and especially if perhaps that student, maybe they have disabilities and working with a team of professionals, where it's kind of hard to say either where the progress is or what progress, the impact of your own work on that student's progress, right? So if there are multiple practitioners who are providing support for a student who's meeting with an audiologist, who's meeting with a counselor or a psychotherapist, and then perhaps you're an ABA, specialist. Maybe you are able to make some incremental sort of steps towards that student's objectives or their IEPs. But since there are other professionals, it's kind of hard to really show what that impact is, right? So I would say that it's important in those sort of instances where, again, you start to think about, even if some things that are measured by your company are measured in a larger way, even if you could see some smaller incremental things that you've been able to do with that child, that again can show that progress. So perhaps if you see small steps week to week, if you're meeting with the student every week, of their communication skills, and that's something that you solely are working on with that person, that's something that you could also either measure by including, a percentage change, or if anything, just stating it, right? Or even if it's confidence, if students have just seemed a little bit more confident in their work through the tutoring sessions that you provided for them, that's fine too. It doesn't, including a percentage change is always a great thing, but if it's hard to measure, it's okay. All right. The lesson there, I would say, is just that you should start to measure these things on your own. That will help you to be able to track that. And also, again, it goes back to really realizing that the work that you're doing really has impact. So does that make sense? Or do you have any questions about that? Let me go there. Okay, well, I don't see any questions on this. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you for the question. I think that was great. Makes sense. Perfect, Marissa. I'm glad to see it. All right, cool. So I think this is, okay, so this is really my last slide. And this is all about how you can tailor your resume every time you apply for those jobs. So are you changing your resume each time you apply? Because I've seen a lot of resumes in Career Hunter, I'm going to answer this for you. Most cases, no. Thank you very much for sharing that, Brian. Yes, it certainly is a challenge, especially right now. There are, a lot of companies that have put a pause in their hiring, but there are still organizations that are listing in Career Hunter. So I would encourage you, of course, to continue to utilize that as a resource, as well as many other sources. In addition to that, it's also good to think about right now, maybe sort of adapting to things that you are applying for, because while there is, pauses in much of the economy right now, there are certainly businesses that have a demand, especially if it's in the areas that are deemed essential. So that's maybe not going to be the answer for everybody, but I think that it's good, even if you're just taking this time to improve. Well, Marie, there are, I'll get to that question in just a moment. Right now is a good time to start looking at that resume and thinking ahead about either internships or programs that you might be applying for in the future. In terms of specific companies that you may be thinking about applying for, one, again, our database, Career Hunter, is updated every single day. We've certainly have seen a large decrease in the number of jobs that have been submitted there, but there are still postings in there. And also, as well as many of the other job boards that are out there, from Indeed's to a lot of the things that are listed on the career link section of our website. Keep yourself on those pages, and that will give you an idea about what's happening right now. And employers, will sort of start, listing all of the things that they need on their career pages. In terms of what is essential, or perhaps if there are maybe part-time. Okay, thank you, Alyssa. Well, even if you're applying for similar companies, Alyssa, it's still a good practice to change that resume, or at least look at what you could revise so that you're more closely aligning your resume to exactly what that employer is looking for. Because on the one side, you have to remember that, especially now, many employers are going to be using their online job boards to filter through applicants. The more closely aligned your resume is to that that job description or that internship description, the more likely it is that your resume is going to go a little bit further up to towards the top of the pile. So make sure that you're, each time you are applying, you're looking over the words, you're looking over you know, the descriptions, and you're tailoring accordingly. So that's a good segue into these next few bullets here. Okay. Yes, thank you, Ethan. That could be a good suggestion. So before applying, this is some things you should be doing to help you tailor your resume. One, review that job and internship carefully. Really get a sense of exactly what it is the employer is looking for. Even make assumptions of what you feel is important. Try to read between the lines. Get a sense also of the order of that description, right? If they have a list of responsibilities or a list of skills that they're looking for, that order also will give you a good sense, because what they're looking for would usually be at the top of the list of what's really important for that particular job. Also highlight certain keywords and aspects that stand out to you. So it might be useful to just print out that that job or internship description, take out that highlighter, and highlight certain things that you think stand out, or draw in the margins certain things that you think are important for this particular job, or if there are things that maybe are not too clear, you know, because obviously employers use a lot of jargon on their job descriptions. They will you could use your own judgment of what excuse me, the phone is ringing there. Sorry about that. You could kind of use your judgment and sort of ask yourself, okay, exactly, if I was in this job, what would I be doing? What exactly, you know, would I need to be responsible for, or how would I actually take on this role? And those ideas, those thoughts can really help you in terms of thinking through how you're going to revise your resume. And then also, yeah, consider the role. What is it exactly that you're going to be doing in that particular job? So if it's a patient relations position for a medical center, think about that role. What exactly are you going to be doing, and what are some of the skills that are necessary for success in that area? So if you're going to be a patient relations coordinator, you need to be able to communicate effectively to patients, but also to physicians and other medical professionals. You need to think about how you are presenting yourself to others. You need to be well organized. You need to be empathetic. You need to deal with a lot of high-paced sort of settings. And these are the things that you need to feature and focus on when you're writing your resume to a job like that. And that's the case for any opportunity. If you're applying for research or education, they're going to need a different set of skills altogether as well. So if you're not changing that wording and featuring why you're the right fit, it's just not going to stand out to the employer, because they're really thinking about it from their own perspective. All right, and then review your resume. Do you have the same words on your resume? Could they be on there, right? So are you using the same terminology all the time? Are there words that maybe could match exactly what the employer is looking for, obviously within the confines of the job description that you're applying for and the work that you've done? You know, again, what I said before with regards to the online job systems, you know, they're going to be scanning for those keywords. So if your resume has the same language, it's going to really help to put that resume a little bit further to the top of the pile. And the same thing is true if they're looking it over by their own eye. Words that stand out to them are going to be words that are right there in that job description. So as closely as you can, ensure that you are, you know, putting those words on there. And then finally, reviewing the order. Sorry, it should be revised. I apologize for that. Can you revise the order of the information, right? So you might be putting in your list of descriptions what's most important, or what you do the most in your job. So if you've had a service job and you know, a lot of the work entails you are cleaning the floors or something like that, but it's not really that important for the job that you're applying for. That doesn't need to be the top thing. You know, focus on what's most relevant for the job that you're applying for, and put that at the top, and focus most of your descriptions and those bullets on what the employer is looking for. If you maybe have had an internship, but you have had other experiences since then, you might want to have a different category for internships that allows you to put that information a little bit further up and a little higher on the page. Or you could have a relevant experience category, which is where you would focus on jobs that are more aligned and more closely related to that field. So if you're applying for healthcare jobs and you've had some volunteer experiences in hospitals, or you've worked in an office, but at the same time you might have had other sort of part-time jobs that are outside of that field, you don't have to have it all in one experience section. You can have a related experience category, and that would be a good way of focusing on those jobs that are more aligned to that role. So I'm going to just go through some of these other questions on the chat. Yes, again, let's see here. I'm just going to scroll down. Sorry about the delay here. Hold on a quick second. Okay, so if someone's doing a double major, would you consider making 2 resumes since they're different fields? Because I don't know if a lot of jobs would care about a skill that doesn't fall into what they're looking for. So Brian, I mean, making different resumes might make sense, especially if you've had different jobs or internships, and you know, and you maybe are applying for different types of roles. So if you have enough experience in the field that you're applying for, then it might make sense to have multiple resumes, so that your resume that you're sending to those jobs or internships that are more aligned to your field that you're trying to study, so that it's more tailored to those jobs. And then, would you be having another Zoom meeting about interviews? Thank you very much, Marissa. I'm glad for that. Yeah, I think we should definitely do more of these. I hope this is helpful for you all, and I think it's nice to just kind of connect with each other. So good suggestion, and I think interviews definitely could be a good idea. So we're still in the career development office. We're still getting used to the technology, and also thinking about things that we could sort of roll out, and also a time frame that might work. But yeah, we'll definitely be having more of these. That's a good suggestion. And then, will you have an official attendance for this resume building session? So I mean, I think I can track who's in here. I don't know, Ethan, if that's related to a specific program that you're taking or not. Obviously, I won't necessarily share that with the world who's attended this. Okay, yeah. So if you need, you can always just email me directly, and I'll be able to do that. Okay. Thank you. Oh yeah. Okay, I got you. Welfare Rights Initiative. Cool. I'm glad they're still following us. Thank you. All right, cool. So that really is it for the presentation. I hope that has given you some ideas. Okay, wait, actually, sorry. Let's see, we have another question here. How can I put what kind of formatting, how to categorize showcase experience? Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll thank you, Mary. I'll definitely email with, I'll follow up via email, excuse me, with those requests for official attendance lists. So that's it for the session. I hope this is helpful for you. I hope this was effective and useful. Any comments or thoughts that you have, please share that either through the chats or directly to career@hunter.cuny.edu. That's the main channel that we're using to communicate. My email is kokrosy@hunter.cuny.edu if you have specific questions for me. And also be happy to field any questions or set up Zoom individual meetings with any of you. So you can certainly email career@hunter.cuny.edu to request that. And follow us on social media. A lot of companies that are reaching out to us and have either virtual information sessions or other support, or looking for our students, they are certainly using Career Hunter to post, but they also might have events that we'll share through social media as well. So check out those channels. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. So definitely check that out. And then I see a lot of chats on here. Thank you all. It was a real pleasure. And also, yes, there was a question adding high school accomplishments. I would, at this point, unless you're a freshman, I would not include anything related to high school at this point. And then, and yeah, Mary will definitely follow up with the email and the mail. We'll be sharing this out very soon, okay? Again, it was a real pleasure. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you all again. Oh, there's everybody. Hopefully seeing you all again very soon on campus, but if anything, certainly virtually. It's good to see friendly faces and hear from you all. And we're here, and we're here to support you throughout. So good luck with the semester. Be safe and feel well, and I hope everything is well with you and your families, okay?